This episode is brought to you by Triggered 22 LLC, a veteran-owned apparel company. By purchasing a t-shirt, hat, or hoodie from Triggered 22, you're not only supporting a small business, but you're bringing awareness to veteran PTSD and suicide. Please help save the lives of those who fought for our freedoms. Visit triggered22.com now and place your order. Let's help those suffering from invisible wounds. Is it Gracie 717?
Yep.
That's your gym?
It's not my gym. Damien Puopolo owns it, and then I run the kickboxing program as well as coach jiu-jitsu there as well. Yeah.
So you're all in on this.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the American Grown Podcast, hosted by Austin Sullivan. The American Grown Podcast will focus on people from different walks of life and their journey to where they are now. Now, turn up your volume and settle in for a great episode.
Hi, I'm Austin Sullivan. This is the American Grown Podcast, recorded inside the Colortech Creative Solutions studios. Today, we have Christian Strictly Business Carr, MMA fighter out of Lancaster, PA, with a professional record of 2 wins, 1 loss, and an amateur record of 5 wins, 1 loss. Christian, welcome to episode 43 of the American Grown Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to speak.
Thank you for making the trip up from Lancaster, the Amish Mennonite country down there, farmlands and everything. So how I first learned about you was from Ross Stockdale. I don't know if that name rings a bell.
Oh, yeah. I grew up training with him a little bit and knew him through wrestling.
He was back on the podcast in episode 21, and he used to live down in Lancaster and do MMA, and he recommended you as a future guest. So
awesome.
Yeah, that's how I first got your name, and I'm like, let me look into this guy. So some of the topics we want to cover include your MMA journey so far, and then also the gym that you not only train and fight out of, but you're working there as well, Gracie 717. And then here are some of the stats about you as a fighter. So this was updated August 11th. So you are the 62nd ranked of 172 active U.S. Northeast Pro Featherweights, the 22nd ranked of 55 active Pennsylvania Pro Featherweights, and the 345th ranked of 1,101 active United States Pro Featherweights. And this comes from Topology.com. So all the listeners out there, I'm not bullshitting you. Go take a look and check it out. Start from the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
All right. So I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in a little town called Lannisville, in the Hempfield School District down there, as well as growing up wrestling for them. So I was homeschooled growing up, so I just kind of got to get to my work and get to the activities. That's basically, the sum of it.
Okay. Any like for your family, brothers, sisters, anything like that?
So I have 2 brothers, 2 older brothers, and I have an older sister as well. And I'm the youngest. I'm the baby.
You're the youngest.
They call me. Yeah.
Okay, you're the baby. Yeah. So in high school, any sports, any activities? What'd you do?
Yeah. So I was a wrestler. First and foremost, for everything, I started wrestling at the age of 4 for Penn Manor School District. Grew up doing that, and did baseball, did some football, stuff like that. And wrestling was definitely my place, and what I put most of my time into through high school, as well as training jiu-jitsu and kickboxing. When
you say wrestling was your place, what do you mean by that?
I grew up playing multiple sports, baseball, football. I played well in all things I did, but I really found a place to stand out when it came to wrestling. I wasn't the most fantastic wrestler in the world, but the individual aspect of it allowed me to apply my work ethic to really help myself stand out of the crowd. When it comes to those team sports, you can stand out as an individual, but, a lot of times it's a group holding things together. And sometimes when the group isn't there and you can make things happen yourself, then you can continue to build yourself in that aspect.
And I'd say wrestling's very much like you're on your own. Like if you're getting beat, it's all on you. There's nobody else that has your back. There's no offensive lineman when you're the quarterback. You know what I mean? You're very much a lone wolf.
Yeah, it's a great way, especially as a young kid, to be able to build yourself, mentally in those aspects where you really don't have anybody else to blame but yourself. You have to learn with your problems as your own and not push them off on others.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Life after high school, what were you thinking? What were you looking to get into? I know some people get right into trade school, some people go right into work or go to 4-year college.
Originally, my goal was to wrestle in college. I looked into
Penn
that.
State, were you thinking? Because they're a very good program.
Yeah, if they
right?
would have had me, I gladly
Yeah.
would have gone to Penn State, but I wasn't quite that good. But I went and checked out some schools, and I was very interested in wrestling in college. But it also kind of turned into a thing where I wanted to go to college to wrestle, and as far as my academics would go, I wasn't sure if I was going to hold that end of the bargain. So I decided to pursue fighting MMA full time. So I had already fought. I had 3 kickboxing fights in high school, and I had my first 2 MMA fights while I was still in high school.
Still in high school?
Yeah, so between my junior and my senior year, I had my MMA debut. I was 18. I think I fought a guy who was like 28, 29 years old.
Seriously?
So that was kind of a crazy perspective, especially going into my my senior year of wrestling.
Okay.
Mind you, there's great wrestlers in high school, but I also had kind of the edge of the fact that I just beat a grown man up a couple months before that.
Yeah.
So that being said, there were still some kids who whipped my butt in high school. It gave me a little bit of a confidence boost. Ultimately, that set the ground for this is an option after high school is to pursue this full time.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're going against somebody almost 10 years, older than you. Okay, so take us back through that fight. So you're still in high school. Mm-hmm. Yeah, now you have a little bit of swagger, right? You just kicked this grown guy's ass. But what was that experience like? Like, diving a little bit more into that.
It was crazy, yeah, and fighting continues to be a crazy experience. There's never a moment that is, better than the next, because in this kind of sport, it's so do or die that every moment is your biggest moment. Although I start to feel more comfortable, there's still that aspect of, this dude might go out and whoop on me. So it's just a perspective you can't really get unless you're in that situation. But coming up around the team that I came up with and being in the individual sports like wrestling, competing in jiu-jitsu matches, competing in kickboxing fights, it's kind of like it's what I came up doing in a sense. Although it was a very uncomfortable situation and continues to be, you find ways to make it normal. You normalize the stressful situations. Goes back to the mentality of the individual sports. You learn to take everything on yourself, and you learn how to process those moments so that, your mental process emulates itself from the time before, and you can, basically have a process.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What the other kids, because you're in high school, what'd they think? Like, what did they think when they heard did the kids not know? Like, your fellow students?
Yeah, they all knew. My coaches sometimes would get a little mad at me when I showed up to practice with my legs all bruised up because I was kickboxing and stuff.
I got you,
like,
right.
Maybe don't do that during the season, kind of thing. They'd
I got
say,
you. The wrestling coaches were like, no.
Yeah, not that they discouraged anything, but it also came into like my style of wrestling was super funky because of the time I spent doing jiu-jitsu, and there was always the constant debate of which is better, for MMA, wrestling or jiu-jitsu. But growing up doing both, I had the
Good
ability to
perspective.
blend it.
Yeah.
And I always tell people it's not that one's greater than the other, although situationally, there's time and place for everything. But they complement each other so well. I was able to give people looks that they weren't used to because, no, I don't want to be on my back, especially in a wrestling match, right? Because that's where you get pinned. That's where they score their near fall points. But my comfortability of understanding what I can do from there gave me a lot of opportunity where guys would take me down, I'd sweep them to their back, and I'd pin them.
Oh, wow.
Because there's these positions that they don't want to practice because that's the last place they want to be. But I'm practicing all the time in the gym because I got to know how to get off my back. I got to know how to choke people from my back. I got to know how to sweep people from my back. So it's kind of like you could do 100 single legs, but you've never got swept on the way down from your single leg, then you're not going to know what that feels like.
Yeah, know what to do.
So
yeah.
It gave me a different look that I think benefited me down the road.
Again, at what age? Like 18, 17, 18? Or
so
16?
My first MMA fight was I was 18 because you have to be 18 in Pennsylvania to fight.
Okay,
MMA.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're fighting in high school against people 10 years or maybe a little bit older, roughly. How did that segue into, starting to train at Gracie 717 and also now you're teaching and instructing, the next generation there as well?
Right. So it all started I was actually working at a summer camp, and we did a martial arts camp for a week up there, right? So up in the Poconos, I was working summer camp, Twin Pines, it's called. And so, was interested in the martial arts camp, thought that was cool. My brother and I were both working up there together, and we're like, we should get into something like this. So basically, he took it to look it up for the first time, just kind of looked up what's in the area. He followed MMA a little bit more than I did at the time, and he was like jiu-jitsu is what's like cool right now. Right?
Okay.
Like, that's what we should try to get into. So we find Gracie 717 just 10 minutes from our house, and then it was actually me and my oldest brother TJ went and took our first trial class. After the first class, my brother Josh, who ended up getting into it a lot more than TJ did, fighting kickboxing, fighting MMA as well. We started going together. He's closer to my age. He's only about a year and a half older than me. So we're homeschooled, staying at my cousin's all the time because we can walk to the gym from there.
Nice, yeah.
So, that was just our day-to-day was, do our little computer school, a.k.a. play video games, and then walk
Play
down
some
to
Call
the
of
gym
Duty?
and get beat up by some adults. Yeah.
That's awesome. Gotcha. So that's how you got introduced to the gym. At what point, maybe we're fast forwarding a little bit, but at what point then did you feel confident enough, or did the gym owners come to you and say, hey, you can start like instructing, start teaching? Like, take us through all that, and shout out the gym owner who you mentioned off air. I can't remember his name.
Damien Puapolo is the gym owner, and he's the head jiu-jitsu coach there as well. So basically it was Damien and my old kickboxing coach, Zach Kelly. So Zach was in charge of the kickboxing, as well as he was fighting MMA, and now he's fighting professional kickboxing again.
Oh, wow.
So he was fighting MMA, and Damien was running the MMA program. So starting off with just kickboxing, Zach kind of took me under his wing. I would have done anything that guy told me to do because, he wasn't steering me in the wrong direction with anything.
Yeah.
So I was 16. He's like, hey, we've got a kickboxing fight. You want to do it? Yeah, I want to do it. Like I said, I would have done anything the dude told me. So I happened for my first kickboxing fight. It was the first time I got to, fight in front of a crowd and stuff like that. I was 16. My opponent was 16 or 17.
Okay, and a kickboxing fight, because I'm picturing like UFC, but kickboxing, you're just explain it.
Minus the grappling.
Okay.
Right, so it's just punches, kicks,
Yeah.
knees. It was a glory rule fight, so you have like your tie clinch. It's a 5-second clinch compared to like K1, which is like one technique in front in the clinch. Boxing with kicks.
Okay,
Simply put,
yeah.
right? So I had my first kickboxing fight. I won that. I had another one a couple years later. But basically, the moral of the story was I was just doing whatever Zach was telling me, putting my time in there, trying to help him out as much as I can while still learning. And I was like, he'd call me his protege, right? So then it got to the point where, he's real busy, and he's like, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to be here a couple days a week. Would you want to start running these classes? So that was kind of my introduction to coaching. A little bit of like him letting me show stuff while he's there coaching, and then, hey man, just like a couple days a month, we'll let you take over. And that was like kind of my first look at it. And then I was working as a security guard at Spooky Nook Sports.
Oh yeah, that's
right?
a huge complex.
Super cool spot.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed working there. But then there was just some days where I'd be working quote unquote security, but I was sitting in my car and counting how many cars came onto the lot for the day.
Really?
for 8 hours. And I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, well, I could spend 8 hours doing anything else.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
It'd be more worth my time.
Exactly.
So then I expanded into coaching a little jiu-jitsu at the gym when Damien let me do that. And then I was like, hey, like, I'm kind of doing this a little bit. How can I do this full-time for real? Damien just pretty much blessed me with the opportunity of being able to coach with almost no questions asked. He just kind of lets me do my thing. I come to him and ask him all these questions all the time, but he's really helped me out in the aspect where he just lets me make it happen.
And what do you think of that when he was just kind of like, you're teaching, go at it?
It's a lot of responsibility from my perspective because I look at Damien as a coach, and he's always been, as many coaches I've had in as many different areas of life, whether it's sports or just mentality and stuff like that. He's always been very good at being super articulate at what he does, and also a knowledge of being able to pass it on to no matter what style he's trying to teach to. In jiu-jitsu, you have, some moves that work for big and tall people, some moves that work for, shorter people, some that don't work for one or the other because of body style, maybe opponent's body style and stuff like that. And there's people I've worked with in all my time in the sport where it's like they know how they can do it, but if you can't do it the way they can do it, they can't show it to you. But Damien's like always had that perspective where he's been able to understand both sides of it. You know, oh, this isn't working for me. Oh, your legs are a little shorter. You should do it this way, type of thing. So my point is he does so well that I feel like I'm doing anybody a disservice if I don't treat it as, you know, as well as he does. So I try my best to articulate things in the same manner that he does. Mind you, I'm playing a lot of catch up with all the knowledge he has for all. You know, he's been a black belt for 10 plus years longer than I've been doing it. I'm just trying to take it one step at a time and respect every aspect of it so that, you know, I can continue to build to be as articulate and be as, you know, quality of a coach that I've came up around.
That says a lot, though, about yourself, because he's trusting you. I mean, he's obviously a veteran of this sport and of this technique, you know, with jiu-jitsu. So for him to entrust you being so young, I mean, how old are you?
24.
I think that says a lot about yourself as a fighter and as a person in general.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And trying to keep up with that, you know, that look.
So how many people attend Gracie 717? Like, how many people come for classes and stuff?
Roughly, I mean, you could get 30 guys on a Monday to jiu-jitsu class. Yeah. And then, you know, have 30 guys on Tuesday, and 15 of them are different. As a collective, I don't think I could think of how many people are there in total. But just for jiu-jitsu, you know, like I said, there could be 60 guys you see in 2 different days. The kickboxing program's really taken off. We get usually like in between 20 or 30 people a class. Right now in the space we're at, you know, we're filling it up.
That's phenomenal. Where's it located? What's the address in case people like want to come and?
Yep. Yeah. So we are at 3515 Columbia Avenue in Mountville. We're actually right across from the Leisure Lanes Bowling Alley, if you've ever heard of that. We got a nice little spot there right now. You know, if things keep going as they are, we'll probably have to expand at some point, but, you know, nothing wrong with that.
That's a good problem to have. The weight division that you fight in is the featherweight. So, from my knowledge, that includes greats like Jose Aldo, Max Holloway, Conor McGregor for some time, but he's always fluctuating in weight classes. And what is it, Alexander? Volkanovski, yeah. So, like, that's the kind of fighters we're talking about for all the listeners. I mean, that's your weight class. Is there any of those guys that you kind of maybe look up to or mimic their style, their movements at all?
Yeah. So, I mean, I look up to all those guys that, you know, are the greatest in any division. There's certain people, there's huge aspects of them that I would love to, you know, implement into my style. But the major like perspective for me is that I have to have my own style. If I try too much to be somebody else, then I'm not gonna be original.
That makes sense, yeah.
But speaking of Conor McGregor, you see people in this sport all the time where it's like you're trying so hard to be this guy, and it's not genuine, and it's not you.
Yeah.
And like he's done what he's done. It's fantastic, but you know he's also kind of fallen off the deep end a little bit with a little bit of what he's had going on, and. You know, it's not sustainable. I always talk to people. It's like Conor McGregor did so many crazy things early in his career. You know, his run to the featherweight title was insane. He goes and wins the lightweight title. That's crazy. You know, he loses the Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
He has this world burner mentality, and he's killing everybody. Okay, you got one chance to come back as that guy, right? Because how genuine is the look every time you come back after another loss? You can't talk about how you're knocking everybody out if you're not doing it anymore.
It's tough, yeah. Yeah, when you can't back it up. Yeah.
So I have a lot of confidence in myself, right? But I'm never going to be that kind of person, you know, because I have too much respect for the sport and, you know, what all goes into it to not be humble and not, you know, understand that anybody has a chance. Doesn't mean that I'm not confident in myself. Doesn't mean that it's not cool when people do it. It's cool when people call their shots, you know?
It's pretty crazy.
But there comes a point in all those people's career where they're not that person anymore. If you can't be the loudmouth, then what are you now?
So you're staying true to yourself. Yeah, which I think is phenomenal because, you see so many young fighters coming up and they want to be the smack talker. They want to do the moves and act as if they've been there, right? But they're not there yet. Yeah, it's funny. Conor McGregor, when you mentioned him and his fight against Nate Diaz, that was tough. I'm a Conor McGregor fan. Been a fan since way back when he first kind of got into it. And yeah, that was tough to watch. Same thing with Ronda Rousey when she was into it. Like those two when she lost to, was it Holly Holmes?
Yeah, Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like watching. I think with MMA fighters, and whether it's UFC or whatever, I feel like the fans, the people get so. I'm kind of tailing off here, but you get so invested into your fighters. Like I'm even more invested than like my football teams or baseball or hockey. Like when they lose, I don't know if it's for everybody, but I feel like it just really hits home.
It's so much different, and you know the fact you bring up the football is a big thing. I don't know who are you a fan of?
I'm an Eagles fan.
Eagles fan, right. So Eagles are doing pretty decent nowadays, to my knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But 10 years ago, how bad were the Eagles?
No, they're bad.
Right, but you were a diehard Eagles fan.
Still a fan, right?
You look at guys like Tony Ferguson, who win 12 in a row. Now I think he's lost like 5 of his last 6.
It's brutal.
And now nobody's talking about how good Tony Ferguson was. They talk about how bad he is now, right? But your football team is, we went 12 and 14 last year, or 2 and 14 last year. We're gonna make it happen this year. Like I said earlier, every fight is your biggest fight. You could have Conor McGregor beat Jose Aldo. If he fought Aldo again, his last win doesn't matter as much because he's got to focus on this one.
Exactly.
I mean, sure, it's gonna play a role the fact that he knocked him out so fast, right? But he's got to do it again.
Right. That's it, exactly. I don't know what it is, but even my wife, she's like, you're different when you're watching the UFC and watching Conor. It's just something. Maybe it's a connection.
He brings the energy, man.
Yeah, he brings exactly. Yeah. So, and I think all fighters do in their own way. You have that core fan group. You have your coaches, friends, family, and then as you start to grow, you get these fans that just, they'll follow you to the ends of the earth kind of thing, So now, what can you tell us about Maverick MMA? The way I look at it, and I don't know, I just did some research, but it seems like a mixed martial arts promotion company here in PA. So is that kind of like the UFC of Pennsylvania?
Exactly, right. So you look at them as organizations, right? The UFC is like the NFL, right? It's the biggest organization. It's the one everybody wants to be in. But, you got these other football promotions too, like I don't know what they're called, arena football, for example, stuff like that. But, they may have a big following, but it's not as big of a following as, the NFL, right? So you got the UFC is like your NFL, and then you have some upper tier promotions like One Championship, PFL, Bellator. Those are
Bellator, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, those are pretty much like the top guns for everything. And then you have, so those are like your international promotions. Right, and then you have your regional promotions. Like a lot of the local ones around here are like CFFC, Maverick MMA, Art of War, Cage Wars, where they're taking all the guys from these regions in here, trying to get them to the bigger stages.
Yeah.
So it's like the minor leagues in a sense, but
that makes sense.
You're fighting as a professional.
So so the better you do, you'll move up.
Exactly.
I gotcha. Okay. How much training do you do being a professional MMA fighter?
I mean, a lot, especially like in my fight camps, which are typically about like a 2-month period. Basically, when I'd like to know that I have a fight coming up, it's about 2 months. I have the privilege to be able to work in my gym, so I'm there all the time. I'm always doing everything. There's not a month I've ever taken off since I started. Like I said, that's a privilege to be able to be there as often as I can, right? So I'm always training, but then when it comes to fight time, I work into some more like specifics, like upping my sparring and stuff like that, making sure I'm getting some work with some high-level MMA guys, which I do up in King of Prussia, actually, at a gym called Algio MMA. A buddy of mine, Bill Algio, he's in the UFC, owns that gym, and we have a bunch of regional like pro guys that we all kind of meet up there and beat each other up. So
nice, I love it.
Yeah,
beat each other up, so casual. It is what it is, right?
All my best friends, we beat each other up on a weekly basis.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's a great spot up there.
Yeah, you recently had a fight just 2 weekends ago,
August 5th.
August 5th,
last Saturday.
Yeah, against what was it, Brian Mitchell?
Brian Mitchell, yep.
Which you lost. I saw on social media, and then of course looking at this Tapology.com, I was able to look that up, and you got the cut at the eye, or
yeah. He punched me up a little bit.
He got you a little bit. So now, when in camp and training for an upcoming fight like that, do you do anything different? And what's kind of like the mentality going into that?
Right. So, like for this camp, I get my original opponent was a guy from Virginia. and I did my first probably month and a quarter getting ready for this one guy.
Yeah.
And then about 3 weeks out, he pulls out of the fight.
Oh.
Yeah, so I ended up...
Why'd he pull out?
He's injured. He said, says his foot hurt.
Okay.
I've been hurt too.
Yeah.
But,
Foot's far away from the heart,
Yeah, everybody's got their own look on that. But so I get a new opponent in Brian Mitchell, right? For me, maybe I should, but I don't do a ton of film work. I have people who really look at film for me, and they kind of tell me the what's what with who I'm fighting, and my coach always tells me this would be a good fight. This is what we have to look at here. For me, I look at it as it's good to know what people are strong at, but I don't want to hyper focus to the point where I don't work my own game plan.
Yeah.
With my last opponent, he was a very good boxer, and he beat me with his hands a little bit, so I understood that, but I still fell short in some areas where I ultimately couldn't catch up to the point where I ended up losing that decision. Props to him for not only did I have to change opponents on short notice, but he stepped up on short notice. He flew out from Colorado on 3 weeks' notice.
Really?
Yeah,
from Colorado
to come make that fight. And then he's got a fight in Pennsylvania where I sold probably 150 tickets.
That's phenomenal.
So props to him for stepping into enemy territory and making it happen.
We say it was a decision. It wasn't.
Yep.
And he came from Colorado. So in Maverick MMA, you're fighting people from all over the states.
Yep.
Wow. Is it also overseas or no?
I don't know about if Mavericks pulled anybody out from overseas, but I have been around promotions where, like local regional promotions, where they're pulling guys from Canada and stuff like that for some kickboxing fights. Because a lot of times, especially in kickboxing, there's a lot of people with a lot of experience, and then there's a lot of people with little experience that, ultimately sometimes fights like that can't get cleared because this guy has too much experience to compete at this level, and there's nobody local to match them with, so they pull guys from wherever they can.
Yeah. You had mentioned your training kind of intensifies the form you filled out to be on the podcast. You said you don't really lift weights or do anything like that. Why?
So I do I call it my joint maintenance, where I'll do some kettlebell work and stuff like that a couple times a week. But ultimately, what's important to me is doing stuff that's functional for what I do on a daily basis. And I have, once again, that privilege to be in the gym as often as I am. And, I can train jiu-jitsu multiple times a week. I can train kickboxing multiple times a week. Sometimes I'm doing both in the same day. Sometimes I'm doing multiple sessions of both in the same day.
Oh, wow.
I like to take care of my body and focus on my recovery. Most importantly, be ready to work what's going to need to be applied in a fight, as far as consistently boosting my technique by being able to be at all my drilling sessions, be all my pad sessions and stuff like that.
So it's not necessarily being, able to lift the most or being the strongest guy. A lot of it's maneuvers and technique.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So
technical destruction.
Technical destruction. Oh, I like that. I like that. So now take us back to this Brian Mitchell fight. Where was it held? And then what's, again, walking into the octagon, what is that feeling like?
It was at the Wind Creek Casino and Event Center in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So a pretty cool story about this was about 10 years ago, I went out to my first ever MMA fight at what was called the Sands Casino in Bethlehem. They've since rebranded to the Wind Creek. So 10 years after I go to my first MMA show, I get to fight my first MMA main event in the same venue.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which was pretty neat. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to capitalize on it, but the experience is what I'm here for, So leading up to the fight, I feel great. Just hanging with my team in the back and, just hanging out doing our thing. I don't get, too amped up.
I was going to say, do you listen to music, headphones, or what?
Yeah, I listen to music. We had the UFC fights up on the TV. We were just kind of hanging out watching those. I just try to, treat it like another day. It's not that I don't get nervous. It's a very stressful environment. I got to fight somebody in front of hundreds of people. I'm a professional. Everything counts so much, especially early in my career, because if I lose a handful in a row now, sometimes that's a hole that's hard to dig out of, So, and like I said, my next fight's always my biggest one. I had mentioned in a post on social media recently, people ask me what's it like fighting? I said, it sucks. It's the greatest experience in the world, but it's very stressful. I tell them every fight is like a job interview.
Oh yeah.
I got to go out there and I gotta win the interview, right?
Yeah.
And if I don't go out and I don't perform, I don't get the job. It's just a way for me to look at it. I've had big wins in the past. I've lost in the past. I know that I'm capable of beating anybody, but at the same time, I move left and they move right, and everything can go wrong in an instant. In this fight, I did pretty well the first half of the first round. I get hit with a clean right hand. It's the first time I've ever been dropped with a punch in my entire life. And now I got to process that in the biggest moment of my life.
Real quick.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's something that's brand new. I'd never been dropped with a punch. Well, I've never been dropped with a headshot, I should say. You know, I've got dropped with body shots and stuff training. Yeah. But I've never been dropped with a headshot in my entire life. You know?
So when it hits you with that right, what's like vision blurry? Like what's going on? You know, you're stumbling back.
Yeah. So I slipped. You know, so I tried to move as he hit me, and then all of a sudden I'm on my back and I'm playing like an open guard position. Okay. You know, trying to defend myself from my back. And I recovered well. I didn't take a lot of heavy shots on the ground or anything. Which is, you know, another situation that I've never really been in. And so as I'm in the back, as I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, like if this happens today, how am I capable of processing it? And it's not something you want to think about, but it's something you have to think about because, like I said, you can beat anybody any day. Anybody can beat you at any day. So, you know, if you're not prepared for either, then, you know, you're not going to be comfortable out there. I always tell people it's like, I'm not nervous to fight. I'm nervous of the outcome. I'm nervous of anything can happen. Yeah. And I don't want to get knocked out in front of my parents.
Right. Oh, you know? Yes. So mom and dad, like they come and support you, of course.
They're my biggest supporters, you know. Yeah. They've helped me out, you know, from the beginning, you know, paying for my gym fees from the start, you know, to then, you know, just supporting me while I wasn't going to college and I'm still living there and stuff like that. My dad's real into it. He understands it really well. My mom is as into it as she wants to be. Yeah. She loves the atmosphere. She loves being there.
Really?
She maybe doesn't understand the sport as much as my dad does. But they believe in me more than anybody, as well as like my brother does. And it's like my dad kind of has this thing in the back of his head where he knows how good everybody can be. But sometimes I think my mom thinks that it's impossible for anybody else to beat me. So sometimes
I got you.
I'm sitting there and I'm like, I try to play the cool guy situation, but I know that every fight's going to be super tough. And she's like, oh, like, how's he look? And I'm like, he looks like a pussy or something like that. Because because what am I supposed to say? Like, I don't know. He might knock me out.
Yeah, especially to your mom, right? But that's awesome that they support you like that because sometimes, you know, parents and even friends and siblings could be like, why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. You're wasting your time. Like, what are you going to get out of it? But yet they see how much you love and appreciate the sport and, like, you know, you have ambitions, you have goals, and they're supporting you. Like, we're all in. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And just like with my gym situation, I'm nothing but blessed to have that opportunity.
Yeah. So now when you're walking to the octagon, what's your walkout song?
You ever listen to Marty Robbins? So Marty Robbins is like he's like an old country singer. And he's
is that the one with the big iron on his hip or something?
So
like that?
yeah, that's What's that song? I've walked out to Big Iron a few times.
Okay.
And I've also walked out to The Master's Call by Marty Robbins.
The Master's Call. It's
been my most recent one. It's off his album. I believe it's called Old Westerns and Gunfighting Music.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's gunfight music, and I'm going out there to hit a quick draw on somebody. So.
I love it. That's perfect. From this last fight, what's a takeaway? What did you learn?
A lot, you know, simply put, I got to be first. And, you know, that was, you know, kind of my thought going into the fight. You know, my opponent was a very good counter striker. And, you know, when I've seen him in the past get a little pressure put on him, he tends to, you know, fall back a little bit. Myself, I'm a little bit more of a counter striker than anything as well. And I allowed myself to overextend and fall into, you know, his counter striking a little bit. He's a good boxer. You know, and he hit really hard. I had said to him actually after the fight that not only did he hit me more times than anybody had hit me in my entire career, but he also hit me harder than anybody has ever hit me in my entire life. Yeah, that's another thing that I had to deal with in the moment because he was smacking me when he was hitting me. He hit really hard. Yeah. Real heavy boxing, you know. But if I went out there and put a little bit of a higher pace on, I think I could have had a little bit better of an outcome. But, as they say, hindsight's 20/20. I can always look at it and say what I could have done, right? But what's most important for me is how I develop from this, and, we'll see what I'll do in the future.
When you're going into the octagon and game planning, is it like, I'm going for a KO? Is that what you're always thinking, or what?
For me,
or tap. You want him to tap, right?
I'm more of a grappling kind of guy. I like to choke people. So I always say, like, if I knock somebody out, it's probably by accident.
Okay.
Of course, I want to go out there and win any way possible.
Right.
I think it's a little bit more fun to choke somebody if capable.
Would you say that's obviously more technique, but once you get them down, because it's, I've seen where they get their arm, and if they don't tap, they're gonna break it, or you get behind them. That's what gets you going.
Yeah. So the mentality of it for me is, it's like in wrestling. You could win by pin, you could win by technical fall. So technical fall would be if I'm up by 15 points, right? They just call it a match. Like a mercy rule. Tech fall, technical superiority. So that's what they call it. But you'd have these guys that go out and they get pinned. Like sometimes, the number one guy gets pinned by the last ranked guy, and they're like, oh, he got caught. Kind of same thing with a knockout for me. Sure, there's beauty in a knockout. You knock the dude out cold, you made it happen. That's crazy, right? But sometimes it's like, oh, you just got caught. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if I wrap my arms around your neck and make you quit on your own conscience, then how do you deny that from me?
Right.
You didn't get caught.
Yeah.
You
had no choice.
I had technical superiority over you, and I made you quit.
Yeah.
You personally chose to quit. That is like higher on the scale for me.
That gets you going. Where do you see your MMA career in the near future?
One fight at a time, like I said. Got to focus on every moment that's in front of me. That's the biggest one. I think I have a lot of potential to get to the UFC and compete at the highest level. I'm still young. I'm getting older every day, obviously, but I'm still young, and as long as I continue to treat every fight as the biggest one, I think that I'll be able to go anywhere I want.
What do you think of Dana White and what he's doing at the UFC?
Everybody's their own person. Sometimes, I don't like some of the things he says or his perspective on stuff, but how does anybody look when, all their perspectives are shared with the world?
Right, under a microscope,
so
right.
Sometimes people are like, oh, did you see what he said? That's crazy. I'm like, yeah, I would never say that in public, but can't wait to work for the guy.
There you go. Who are some of the mentors that have helped you out along the way?
Damian Puopolo and Zach Kelly, were huge in helping me come up technically in these sports, but also just like, laying the plan out for me. Zach did everything that I did before I did it, pro MMA, pro kickboxing. He always said to me that he made the mistake so I didn't have to. So
there you go.
There's a lot of situations, in his early career that, maybe he fell short, and he could share that perspective on me. So I can understand that before it happens to me as well, right? And that was always huge to me. One of my biggest mentors in my entire life was my dad, being an excellent hard worker and always staying on top of me for anything that I'm doing to make sure that I'm doing it to the best of my ability. And, I wasn't the best student. My mom would always talk about how he got straight A's, and I'm always sit there and I'm like, oh, well, whatever. He just does everything right all the time.
Yeah.
And, it's easy for him to do it because he just does it right all the time. So I always just kind of looked at the way that he did things to the best of his ability at all times and tried to implement that into anything I had going on as well. Another big one for me is old man Randy. He's my chiropractor and one of my best friends.
Okay, I had that on here.
Yeah.
Who's old man Randy?
Old man Randy. He's like my 60-year-old uncle that I'm not related to.
I love it. Yeah.
But he's such a great supporter for me. No matter what I have going on, he's always real with me, and he's always supportive. In my losses, he's been there to share a good quote with me to help me understand that this is just a bump in the road, but also tell me why things happen and help me understand that there's steps to be taken to make sure that things don't happen. But he always stays, positive with me regardless. And I can't thank anybody more than Randy.
Old man Randy.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So it sounds like he kind of keeps you grounded.
He's like a mythical creature, I tell people.
Yeah.
It's like Old man Randy's like one of the most unique people I've ever met my entire life. You go into a Best Buy, he knows the owner before you leave.
That's awesome.
Type of guy, you know.
I just picture like a
big
beard.
goatee.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
He does.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, perfect. Well, shout out to old man Randy.
Old man Randy.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Also the best chiropractor in the business.
Yeah.
Renaissance
Cracks you
Chiropractic.
up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, shout him out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Renaissance Chiropractic. Randy Fry. He's the man. Everybody knows that.
So now, what motivates you to be the best version of yourself?
The people around me. My brother Josh has always been a huge supporter of me, telling me he thinks I could beat everybody in the world, but also being honest with me when in wrestling matches and fights when things didn't go my way. He never has held back on me. You know, all my family. My grandparents are huge supporters. They've been to all my wrestling tournaments. They've been to all my fights. You know, they make custom shirts so they can stand out in the crowd. My girlfriend's family, they're at all my fights. They're supporting me through my weight cuts. You know, I show up to the family party and, you know, there's some extra celery on the table so that I have something to eat. You know?
Yeah. I was going to say, what's that like?
The weight cuts, no fun. But also all those people around me like to tell me how grumpy I am. But, you know,
yeah,
I'm going through
it's
it.
part of it.
I'm like, give me a week. I'll be all right.
Do you want to shout out your girlfriend, her family?
Yeah, the D Filippos. We got Jeremy, Mr. Dad there, and then we have Nicole and Miss Belle, my beautiful girlfriend.
Yeah. What are you most passionate about?
Obviously, really invested in my own career at this point, but down the road, I'd like to run my own program and be able to be in that mentor perspective that I was graced with by the people I mentioned growing up in this. So I'm passionate about building what's around me. At the same time, building what's around me to benefit me in the aspect of I'm currently fighting and I want to build people around me so that I can teach people how to beat me up so I can put myself in all these types of situations I'm going to see against, you know, the best guys in the world. But then down the road, you know, I'd like to be able to take a step back as a fighter and just help people come up the way that, you know, others helped me come up. And I said I grew up homeschooled and I did cyber school, and it was just like, in my opinion, a terrible learning space for me as far as like being on my own time, doing the computer thing.
Yeah.
But then like jiu-jitsu was the first thing I ever did where I was like, this is my element of learning, being in like this first person position, being able to ask questions in the moment, being hands-on with things. And since I've understood that for myself, I've been able to implement that in anything else that I do in life. And, you know, I just say that's my learning process now. I got to get hands-on. Jiu-jitsu taught me a lot, but it especially taught me how to learn. And it doesn't matter what it is, I can take that perspective and build off that. So my goal is just to help people in that aspect.
And maybe one day have your own gym.
Exactly, yep.
Yeah, perfect. So what are the items you brought with you today?
First off, I brought my amateur title belt. That was here. I won for the Maverick MMA 145-pound title. And that was a really big one for me because growing up wrestling and stuff, I always did well, but there would be times where I would maybe fall short of the top. And then in my amateur MMA career, I was undefeated. I had my first title fight, and that was also my first loss. And for me, it was kind of like overcoming the peak of the mountain, where not only did I made it to the stage, but I won on that stage. So being able to win a title was really big for me, especially because I had a few-year layoff between this fight and my last fight before that because COVID happened, and then I ended up tearing my knee up and having to get knee surgery. So I was coming off probably close to 2.5 year layoff to come back, and I put on the performance of a lifetime for that belt. So
to get this belt here, take us like, you know, where's the location? Who'd you fight? Was it go through all that?
Yeah, so this was I fought at the Split Rock Resort in the Poconos. Lake Harmony, it's called. So I was fighting. It was my first fight for Maverick. I was fighting for their featherweight title, and I was fighting a guy named Nicorelli out of New Jersey.
Okay.
I believe he was maybe 3-0 at the time. So undefeated.
Wow.
I think maybe he had 1 or 2 knockouts or submissions on his record. So I knew I was gonna, be fighting a tough dude. And then I came out first round, hit him with a big low kick, and then put some pressure on him. I actually kind of sat him down on the fence. Did a little grappling. I think it ended up even getting taken down at the end of the first round. So I was like, all right, going in the second round, he's tough, and he's taking some of my best shots at this point. trading back and forth. He shoots a single leg on me. I hit the best lat drop of my life, threw him about halfway across the cage. That was pretty cool. But
That's
then
awesome.
we get up. I hit him with a front kick, and he actually hits me with this overhand right that like snapped my head back.
Ooh.
But as he does that, I was standing in southpaw, and I whip a right hook through and drop him with a right hand.
Yeah.
And, set him to his knees, and I get on top, and I throw my whizzer in, so he throws an underhook. So he's basically trying to build a base back up.
Okay.
So I throw my whizzer in, and I'm just hammering him with punches. And
Real quick, a whizzer. What,
a whizzer.
What's a whizzer?
So you have your underhook, where basically like your arm would be under my armpit to like try to jack me up, right? Which is your best position for trying to build up off the floor. And then my whizzer is kind of like a counter position to that. So that would be my overhook, applying like counter pressure in there to stop you from building a base up. So he's trying to build up. I'm trying to bear down. And in my head, I'm like, just don't stop hitting him. So I just keep hitting him in the face. Then he ends up clearing his underhook inside and turning to the floor. And then my head just goes, grab his neck.
Yeah.
And I just choked him.
Lights out. That was it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So then walk us through it. So you choke him out.
Yep.
The fight's over. What happens next? Like who's the Joe Rogan guy come in with the mic? They bring the belt.
Yeah. So
what are you feeling?
First off, I scream at the top of my lungs.
Yeah.
And probably almost flexed out because I was screaming so loud. And then my brother comes in and probably punches me upside the head or something like that. But yeah, and then I believe Sean Joshua was Mr. Joe Rogan in this situation.
Okay.
He comes in and I think they were calling me the Great White Ninja because I was pulling out some funky moves and that.
Great White Ninja.
But it's strictly business, and we're sticking to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a cool one, and like I said, with the layoff, it was just a big moment to come back to. Not only did I come back from a little while off, but I also came back in a stellar way. So
yeah,
I was super psyched about that.
That is crazy to be off for that long, having, would you say, knee surgery then, and plus COVID thrown in there.
Yep.
Props to you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously. So now, let me ask you this, because you mentioned, strictly business, and I want to bring that up. I'm sure a lot of listeners. How did you get that nickname? How'd that come about?
So, my brother's father-in-law, right? So his wife's dad, came to one of my wrestling matches when I was in my junior year. So we were wrestling in their home school district of Ephrata, and then it was the Ephrata senior night, right? So they grace all the seniors for their senior night, and I had to wrestle one of their seniors that night. I go out, I hit a high crotch on him and just stick him on his back. And my brother's father-in-law is real into like WWE. We always had like a good connection over talking about old wrestlers and stuff like that. So of course he's into the nicknames such. And he goes, man, you went out there all business, strictly business. Right?
Yeah.
And so ever since then, a bunch of guys at my gym started calling me that, and they call guys that have been with me, since I was young, they call me SB or strictly business or whatever.
Yeah.
But
that's fitting.
yeah, I've just stuck with it.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you are strictly business.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. So now the brown belt. Tell us about that.
My brown belt in jiu-jitsu was just a look at all the hard work I put in over these years under my coach Damien. I came up around a ton of super tough guys growing up. I'm always looking up to these guys. I still do. Through their ranks in jiu-jitsu as I was, a young kid. I think I was probably Damien's one of his youngest blue belts he ever had, because I came in so young, and then you just constantly always seek the next stage of it, but it's kind of like you also have to have like this silent respect of you never ask about when you're going to get promoted, and you never expect anything more than where you're at the moment. Truly honors me that he entrusts me with being this level under him, especially when, it's not like I'm famous or anything, but I have a decent following, and, people know where I come from, and everything that, I do is, a reflection of him. Yeah. Because of he's the one who's brought me up. So I just take it as a great honor that, he entrusts me with moving me on to the next stage, and, continues to allow me to work the way that I do. Yeah,
because it's not easy. This isn't just given out. Mm-hmm. It's blood, sweat, multiple hours.
Yeah.
Multiple hours.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm still pretty young, but I got my blue belt at maybe 16, and then purple belt around 19 or 20, and then I just got this last year, and so I'm almost 10 years into this now, and we're still kicking.
That's phenomenal. And the last item you brought, you have the gloves. These are actually actual fight gloves that
Yep.
you've
So
worn.
these are my my gloves from my professional debut. I fought Shaquan Moore out of New York. That was also at the Split Rock Resort.
Okay.
So that was the next major step after the belt, right? Because I win my last amateur fight, right? And now it's, we're going to take a step into the pro ranks. And my opponent had, I believe, around 10 pro fights along boxing, kickboxing, and MMA. He'd fought a lot of really tough guys, and he'd never been finished either.
Yeah.
So it was a big fight for me. He was more so a striker than anything, but he also had like this real tall and like lanky build, which is pretty tough to grapple against as well. So I was in there, and we're pretty neutral for a little while, and then I hear a voice out of the crowd that says 3-6. Old man Randy's voice. I would recognize it out of anywhere. So I hit him with the lead hook uppercut, and it kind of just changed the momentum of the fight. And then second round, I ended up taking him down and choking him as well. So
Wow. Yeah.
It was a good one.
Shout out to old man Randy coming through big. How can our listeners connect with you, follow along on your journey? Also shout out to, Gracie 717 and the gym there.
Yeah. So we have me on social media, Strictly Business Carr on there. Strictly Business Carr, just one word. Or Christian Carr on any social media platform. You can find me on there. As well as the gym, Gracie 717. I believe in both links are in my Instagram and my Facebook bios for their page, and then you can obviously follow them as well. You
also have, I think, your own personal website with your own kind of like apparel and stuff.
StrictlyBusinessMMA.com, I believe it's called.
Okay.
From Rama Digital Design, they designed that for me. It's just kind of a main hub. You can go look at my merchandise on there from MMA T Co, who makes my T-shirts. Any fight news and stuff I have is on there. You can book private lessons with me, as well as seeing my personal schedule for when I'm coaching group classes at the gym.
Awesome. Before we close out, is there anything else you would like the listeners to know?
Support your people, your local people that are doing their own individual thing, on any stage they have going on, because there's plenty of people around that are capable of doing great things as long as the support is around them. So support those that are around you like they're the world champion.
There you go. Do you have any fight yet scheduled? I know you're just coming off one.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay.
We'll see what's up. I'm hoping to get something running in the late fall, winter time.
All right, so I got a couple more questions.
Cool.
And the one's been on my mind since you walked in the door here at Colortech. And I think it's phenomenal. I'm a big Harry Potter fan, and I'm a big Morgan Wallen fan. And you're rocking the mullet, the glasses. Mm-hmm. Does anybody ever say that?
So actually, growing up, I had a little bowl cut thing going on.
Did you?
And I'd wear the little circle glasses. People would tell me I look like Harry Potter. But yeah, I get the Morgan Wallen thing sometimes too. Actually, I think I just saw something about how he cut his hair or something.
He did, yeah.
So he used to look like me, is what it.
That's what it is. Like. Yeah. And then the last thing, I'm just going to throw it out there, because I think if you speak it into existence, it could happen. You probably already have somebody, but if you ever need a sports photographer, a fight photographer, I'd be more than happy. I'd be honored to come photograph you. The reason I say that, here at Colortech, we also have Blue Cardinal Photography, which local people know. So we cover all the local high schools, Leavenworth Valley College. But then myself, as a freelancer, like I've photographed it at Heinz Field, Lincoln Financial, Madison Square Garden for a bunch of different colleges, Temple, Louisville, photographed their men's basketball at Madison Square Garden. It's crazy. And I haven't shot in a while. Like I even did the fight in Phil's. Never got to the Phillies or like the Eagles. That'd be cool. But just throwing it out there. If you ever want a professional sports photographer, I'm not looking for payment. I would just come photograph and
that would be awesome.
Give you the photos.
We could
and
definitely
stuff.
work something out.
That'd be sweet, man. Awesome. Well, if you're good, I'm gonna close it out.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Christian Strictly Business Carr, MMA Fighter on the American Grown Podcast in the Colortech Creative Solutions studios. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
To see photos of today's guests and more content, just search American Grown Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review.
If you'd like to be a featured guest on the podcast, please direct message or email Austin at americangrownpod@gmail.com.